I'm very excited to introduce the speakers within our next panel, and specifically, I'll start with our moderator, Aaron Ang. Aaron is the Director of Education at Right Hand Cybersecurity. He was formerly part of the Cybersecurity Agency of Singapore. During his time at the CSA, Aaron worked with veterans in the industry, both in the public and private sectors. He also serves as a council member and the chief executive of the Cyber Youth Singapore. Aaron also worked at the headquarters of the Ministry of Education in Singapore as well. So with that, I will pass it over to Evan to take us into our next panel on how to create next generation cyber awareness programs. Very fitting for Cyber Awareness Month. Aaron, over to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Theo. So I guess we're going to have ourselves spotlighted on the screen in a while's time, I guess. Give me a second.
Yes, I'll do that right now.
All right, while waiting for the spotlights to come on, a very good morning, very good afternoon, very good evening, wherever you are in the world. So I'm actually based in the beautiful island of Singapore. It's 10:30 a.m. right here in Singapore. Beautiful sunny morning. So we've had rainy weather for the past week, actually. So it's a great day to start a panel to talk about cybersecurity awareness. So this morning, this afternoon, this evening, I'm actually joined by two very awesome panelists, Ms. Cheryl Wong and Ms. Daisy Wong. So I'm just going to give a quick introduction of their profile. But it's my job to read the profile, but I'll leave it to them to tell us a bit more about what they do at their company and what is their role. So first up, we have Ms. Cheryl Wong, who is the Cybersecurity Culture Change Specialist at Catch. So Cheryl is passionate about educating and empowering people on protecting themselves online. Focusing on the human elements of security to manage risk, she influences behavioral change to build a positive cyber culture in the workplace. So Cheryl, really great that you can join us this morning. I hope you're feeling good today, Cheryl.
Thanks, Aaron. It's great to be here, and thanks for the invitation.
And well, our panelist is Miss Daisy Wong. I have to be honest, when I first saw the panelists, I thought both of them were like sisters, which I then realized that's not true. So Miss Daisy Wong is the Security Culture and Awareness Lead at Flybuys. Daisy is the Security Culture and Awareness Lead at Flybuys. She's a result-focused and energetic leader, as you can tell, offering 8 years of combined experience in security culture and operations within the IT and fintech industries. So Daisy is passionate about protecting members and team members from security threats and believes that humans are the best line of defense for any organization. So good morning as well, Daisy.
Good afternoon. It's 1:30 in Melbourne, sunny Melbourne, but thank you. And yes, Cheryl and I are not related, unfortunately, but we are neighbours. I like telling people.
Wow. So like literally staying like opposite each other across the street kind of neighbours?
Probably 7-minute drive.
Well, that's pretty near, considering in the Melbourne context, I guess.
Exactly.
Okay, so perhaps Cheryl and Daisy, you could actually tell us a little bit more about your role, and then give us an overview of cyber wellness or cyber awareness program at your organization's piece.
Cheryl, do you want me to start or yourself?
You can go first.
All right, I'll take the first one then. So like Aaron said, I'm the Security Culture and Awareness Lead at Flybuys. And for those who don't know, it's a loyalty program in Australia, one of the most well-loved one. I'm pretty sure PR will appreciate me saying that and making sure everyone knows what Flybuys is. I joined the organisation in April. And so before me, there actually wasn't a security culture or awareness function. So there was no proper program. It was quite ad hoc. We did have a phishing capability, but there was no strategy to it. I think they tried, aligning the templates to what was happening, in the news cycle, but it wasn't tailored or anything like that. So right now, my remit currently is for team members only. So employees, we're not doing members yet. Our customers, we do have 8.5 active million members, which is a lot. So I do want to expand my remit, but right now it's really just helping our team members become our first line of defense. As I'm sure a lot of people on the call will know, unfortunately, a lot of breaches and incidents do are caused, and most of the time unintentionally, by humans. So how do we empower and help our team members protect themselves, but also the organization's information and system?
All right. Thanks for that, Daisy. Interesting that you mentioned there was no proper security awareness program, prior to you joining Five Eyes. So was this, the so-called ad hoc awareness kind of information kind of a template done by HR, or was it done by the IT team? Or which team was responsible for doing this ad hoc awareness before you joined?
So in Australia, I can only speak from my own experience. A lot of the times it's done by the GRC, Governance, Risk and Compliance team. So it was done by the GRC manager on the side of her desk. Literally, she had to manage all the audits, all the risk management, all that. And then on the side, she did awareness, and she did the best she could. But she simply didn't have the time or the resource to focus and create a proper dedicated program and really target the risks that Flybuys experience, because, each organization will have a different human risk profile.
I see. Thanks for that, Daisy. Cheryl, is it the same in the organization before you joined? Or was there already a cyber awareness program, or how did it work in your organization?
It is very similar. So I actually only joined Catch 3 weeks ago, so fairly new here. So Catch is an online shopping platform, a bit like a marketplace out there at the moment. Think like Amazon, but a little bit smaller scale. So here I am. I will be building a program within the organisation to improve the cybersecurity capabilities of all our staff. At the time, they were doing phishing campaigns on a regular basis, and that was actually done by our fraud manager at the time. So now we wanted to really go in and engage and push this out to the wider audience and really build that capability. But I feel that within Australia, many organisations are just getting on board on having an awareness person focused on uplifting their staff. I worked at a previous company as well, and they were only just building the capabilities there as well. So it is fairly new within the Australian space, I feel.
I see. And what was probably the factor that led to Australian companies getting staff who's dedicated to doing security awareness? Was there a particular incident? Was it a government push? What was it in your opinion, really?
I'm not 100% sure, but I have probably in the last 4 months started to see a bit more of an uplift in these roles. But given in Australia, it's probably well known that we've had a number of breaches, quite large public breaches in the last 4 weeks, such as the Optus breach, Telstra breach, Medibank private breach, that more companies will probably start to see the uptake of these roles as well.
I see. Daisy, would you have any insights on that as well? Or what's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, 100%. I think I completely agree and with Cheryl and resonate with it. I did work in a government department previously, and I think from a federal government and state government point of view, there has been more focus on the human element. So, people, process, technology. I think previously there was a lot of focus on technology and processes, and I think the people side was lacking. So I think we're just catching up. I hate to say it, but never let an incident go to waste. So I think it's unfortunate, but a lot of the organisations are, like Cheryl said, uptaking or creating these security culture and awareness roles in light of these breaches.
I really like that quote, never let an incident go to waste. I'm going to actually take that down and use it somewhere, someday, in some panel as well. So, and I do agree. So even in Singapore, so Daisy and Cheryl are based in Australia. As I mentioned, I'm based in Singapore. So even in Singapore, within the government sector, a report in the Straits Times, which is our biggest local news paper, states that public officers actually reported 178 cases of data leaks by the Singapore government in the previous year, and there was actually a 65% increase from the previous year. And most of these leaks, part of them were due to technological issues, but the majority of leaks were actually due to human error. So, in security, we always say the last line of defense, which is also the weakest line of defense, are humans. So I guess it's a two-edged sword. We need humans in cybersecurity. So there's also a lot of talk, whether AI can totally replace the human in defending an organization. Well, personally, I don't believe that we can do that 100%. AI can make things easier for us. It can automate processes, but we still need the human being to make that decision and to follow the protocols and to follow the rules as well. So with this point, I would just like to check perhaps back with Cheryl, because Cheryl was talking about, starting to build a program to improve the cyber awareness capabilities of her staff. Perhaps, in your opinion, what are some of the most critical aspects of cyber awareness programs? A lot of employees just see this as a checklist that I actually have to do. I get onboarded into a company, I need to go through a cybersecurity awareness. So what can make our cybersecurity awareness program successful, rather than an off-the-shelf checklist, and then get it done and over with kind of a cybersecurity awareness program?
Yes. So we do have that check the box, so a compliance mandatory training that everybody needs to do. But for me, it's about getting the buy-in from your staff. Like, you need to think about what's in it for me. So when they kind of think what's in it for them and how it's going to reflect on them. So what I like to try and teach are different behaviors which they can actually take back home and use in their own personal lives. And then once they start using those in their personal lives, then those behaviors will transition into the workplace. That, I think, is the most important part of the program in trying to get the staff to relate to what you're actually saying.
I see. Daisy, how about you? In building cybersecurity awareness program, what are some of the more critical success factors in your opinion?
In my opinion, definitely what Cheryl said, we're not sisters, but we think alike. But my other famous line, Aaron, and if you want to take it, but don't quote me because I don't know how appropriate it is, but I think top down, bottom up, and I like to squash everyone in between. But I don't mean that, but I think having support from your executive leadership is very, very important, because it really is a top down, bottom up approach, right? And I couldn't agree with Cheryl more about the, teaching skills that you can take home. So I always say work, play, and learn. That's really important. It's we use technology. We're online for all aspects of our lives, not just for work. So if we're able to really, and I think ultimately with security culture and awareness, and I like the word culture more than awareness now, because if you ask me, I think awareness is a little bit more one way. Just because you're aware of something doesn't mean you're going to change your behaviors, but culture is more inherent behavior change. And I think that's more important, and that's really critical to the success of any program.
Wow. So if I could summarize, what Cheryl and Daisy has said, I think one of the most important things to make cybersecurity culture or awareness, depending on how you call it, relevant to their daily lives. I mean, if I'm talking about something that, it's a way, it's just flying above us, we're talking about technical jargon, then probably what people will do is that, they'll just think that this is something I have to just get done and over with because it's not useful for me at all. However, if I could link it, on to things that are going on in my daily life, probably about scams, for example, then that will actually make a huge difference, because I'm actually learning things that not only benefit me at work, but in benefiting my personal life as well. So from Daisy's point, the support from key stakeholders within the company, I think it's very important as well. So I guess, and I can see that both of your companies have actually invested in a position to do cybersecurity culture. So we can actually see, how much importance they have on this focus as well. So I'm not sure if the attendees here are aware, but in Singapore, just towards the end of last year and this year, there was a huge scam involving one of the largest banks in Singapore, known as OCBC. So the scam was a simple SMS smishing scam. So the scammers just pretended to be from the bank, just sent out text messages to people telling them that, hey, there's something wrong with your account. You need to click this link in the SMS to fix your account. So the moment they clicked the link, they were taken to a phishing bogus website. They entered their credentials and there they go. Money was lost. So the interesting thing about this particular scam was a couple of things. So first, millions of dollars were lost, and it got to a point where public attention was so great, the bank actually had to compensate all of these victims. This was really unheard of in the industry, and it was a one-off kind of a thing. So the second point that was interesting was that the victims who were scammed were not senior citizens who were not tech savvy. The people who were scammed were young tech generation. They were perfectly, they grew up using tech. Some of them were finance professionals. Some of them were IT professionals. So it doesn't mean that, if you are tech savvy personnel within the company, you will actually be protected, or what to do in the event of a scam. So such things are actually some misconceptions that we have seen. In fact, there have been research to say that, to show basically that tech and finance people are some of the easiest praise out there in the market, because their jobs are so fast-paced and fast-moving that it's so easy to get their attention and to get them worried, with some urgent or threatening messages out there. So this is something that that's real, and it's not only something that's going to happen in your workplace. It's going to affect your personal lives as well. So interesting, Daisy, you actually mentioned as well, leadership as being very important in ensuring that security awareness programs works. So for those of us out there whereby our leaders may not be so in tune, or they may not be so concerned about security awareness. So how can employees or even compliance managers or IT teams seek to get buy-in from their leaders on a good cybersecurity or culture program?
Yeah, sure. So I might address the first point first about that scam. I did hear about it, and it is true from personal experience. IT and security teams often do score badly in phishing campaigns. That's my own experience, and it's often they are under a lot of pressure. And also, and don't quote me on it, but it from my experience, a lot of technology security team members think they know it. Like they're not going to get phished. It's going to be so obvious, but they're busy, right? And and they don't. I've recently done one, and the email domain was just it was literally just manager at company. Like there was no name, no nothing, but a lot of people clicked on it. And in terms of how do you get senior leadership buy-in, I think it's really important, and it's not just for senior leaders, but it's to speak your target audience language. So I think for executive leaders, whether it be CFOs, CEOs, or whatever it is, you need to speak their language and really translate what these human risks are into business risks. And, using, like we said before about the current breaches, use that as an example. What does it actually mean to not have a security awareness program, not to focus on empowering your staff, and what is the potential, outcome? What is the reputational damage? How much time and money is that actually going to cost you versus compared to having an awareness program? The other thing I used in my interview, I think it helped for me getting this job, was I think, also helping customers understand cybersecurity so they can protect themselves. And that can kind of be a competitive advantage. I think I really like the cyber industry because no matter which bank you are, you kind of work together. You're all fighting against the same cyber criminals. So, why fight against each other? Why not work together? So that's the advice I would give. I found it really helpful when you talk about business risks and speak their language and not just constantly talk about the CIA triad. Like, like the CEOs and CFOs are like, whatever you're talking about, I'm not relating. But as soon as you tell them, this is how much it's going to cost you to do a program, this is how much you're potentially going to save. And I often like explaining cyber like an insurance policy, because you don't really get a return on investment. Like, I find it really difficult to measure a success of an awareness program or measure culture, because it's very intangible. It's not something you can go, I spent X amount on marketing, X amount of products are sold. There are other things you can measure. But yeah, I think that's the main advice I would give.
Interesting. So I guess our C-suites, are usually concerned with how a company is progressing in terms of financials. And then you're telling them we're going to spend $1 million on a cybersecurity culture awareness program as compared to $10 million. And I guess what you mentioned about reputation. So reputation, honestly, in my opinion, can actually be a bigger risk, than monetary losses. So most companies, the money side is okay, but if your reputation is at stake, then I guess it's a whole different ballgame. Cheryl, in your opinion, how about any advice for executives or for IT teams or GRC teams who actually need to start on a cybersecurity program, but they need to actually convince their leaders to do so? Any tips from your end?
Yeah, it can be quite challenging because, as Daisy said, and I absolutely agree, we do need to talk the business language, and a lot of people aren't able to translate that into being business language. So quite often it's those tangible assets or programs that the board or senior leadership will look at. So the operations team might get the money for the tools that they can use, because that's kind of tangible that they can actually see. But in terms of the human behavior, the human risk, it really is something that's not tangible. And it is really hard to define, but you do need to look at the risk factor. And if you aren't able to provide an awareness program, how is that going to affect the overall business? So like Daisy said, there's reputation, but there's also a financial loss. So if someone was to click a phishing email and the whole system went down, how would the business operate if you weren't able to function? Your operations isn't able to operate at all. So there's some of the areas that you do need to look and try to convert that into being business language that the CISOs or the senior leadership team needs to understand. And then interesting point of when you were talking about, the tech people getting phished as well, I absolutely agree. The tech people I've phished quite often will send me an email and go, Dan, you've caught me again. And it's because they're just so busy. They're doing 2 or 3 things at the same time, and they're just not paying attention to those emails that we send, even if it is blatantly black and white and it's obvious that it is a phishing email. They tend to often click because they are just way too busy.
So, interesting, both Cheryl and Daisy mentioned that cybersecurity culture is something that's intangible. You cannot measure the success of a program by ROI. If I spend $1 million on this program, what is my return on my investment? So interestingly, I was just speaking to a couple of CISOs in banks in Singapore. So I shall not name the bank because this might be a bit sensitive. So there were 2 different banks with very different treatment of cybersecurity culture. So Bank A, they do regular phishing campaigns as well. Now, if you actually fall for a phishing campaign 3 times in a financial year, you lose your bonus for that year. And if you know the banking industry, bonuses for banks are pretty significant. And company B or Bank B does it a different way. So if you report a phishing email or you report a bad behavior, for example, you actually get rewarded in terms of vouchers and things like that. So we see very different ways that companies are actually treating cybersecurity culture. So perhaps, Cheryl, in your opinion, what would you say, or what does a successful cybersecurity culture program look like? You have implemented a program, and what would you like to see as the outcome, of a successful cybersecurity program?
So some of the obvious things that you can probably measure are, say, like your phishing campaigns, where you can measure your click rates and your report rates. And it is really important that you increase those report rate clicks, because the more people who can report, the higher the chance that we'll be able to get on top of those phishing emails if they were a real one, and we can hopefully mitigate the problem sooner rather than later. There's other things that you can do also in terms of doing targeted campaigns, targeted training, and I've done several times now specific training to certain areas of the business. And a lot of the times these people aren't actually aware of some of the practices that cyber criminals actually do. So making them aware and showing them the different signs and giving them the confidence of knowing what to look out for has really helped in terms of helping them change their behaviours as well. So it's not only about doing your usual phishing campaigns or doing some training, it's being active and being in presence all the time, because like anything else, if you don't practice it, you tend to lose it sometimes. So it is a case of letting the staff practice, engage, having a place where they can talk to if they have any problems or concerns, and just letting them be aware of all the different on-trend scams that are happening as well. So they are really, have the knowledge to be able to fight back.
Daisy, how about you?
Yeah, I completely agree. And, as much as I always joke, I'm going to be the most hated and most well-loved person in security because I always fish them. I much prefer to give them that safe place for them to actually click. Do you know what I mean? It's as much as they might feel embarrassed by clicking, but at least it's safe. It's not an actual attack, right? So I think that's really important. And just to go back to your point, Aaron, about, bank A and B, I'm a strong believer of using the carrot and not the stick. Usually prefer carrot with cream cheese on top and make it a carrot cake. But that's only because, I don't think it's fair for us to expect, I always use my best friend who's a nurse, right? She is hired as a nurse to save lives, to perform surgeries and operations, but now we expect her to also be a tech savvy cyber guru and know all these tips and tricks to protect herself, not to click on this link. I don't think that's fair either. I think, we should, create a safe environment for people to learn and, like Cheryl said, practice and, reward good behaviors. I think, generally speaking, most people react better when their behaviors are rewarded as opposed to, having consequences.
Thank you, Cheryl and Daisy. So what I hear is that one of the most important things, or one of the more important things, is to actually not just have a security awareness or a culture program that begins at the beginning of the year or when you are onboarded, and then it ends there. Everyone's just expected to know what you have done 12 months ago. So something that's ongoing, where you actually get a chance to not only practice what you have learned, but also remediate any gaps in understanding that you actually have. So it's just like learning a language. If I've learned Japanese, for example, I'm going to actually have to need to practice it. Otherwise, 6 months down the road, a year down the road, you're going to actually have to lose touch of the language as well. And what I really like what Cheryl said on this, I think this is something that we often overlook. So if you don't actually have, someone who's actually looking after cybersecurity culture program, what's going to happen is that, it's going to get it done with, and I'm going to move on to the rest of my audits, my financial risk, so that's something that, we should take care of. And, Daisy, you actually mentioned that, most of the time our staff are really busy. They have their work functions to take care of. And, they are not there to be tech people. They are not there to be IT people. And unfortunately, sometimes they might not be the most tech savvy people as well. So it's a challenge for them to actually learn to use tech in the first place. And having to actually juggle all of this security awareness and culture kind of thing, it just makes their lives a bit more difficult as well. So I think what you mentioned, about just giving them the capacity to learn, making sure that the environment is actually nurturing, just like when we actually learn things in school, it's something that's pretty important, I guess, as well. So really would love to continue this conversation. I have so many questions that I would love to ask the both of you actually, to learn more about companies, and that's how we learn in cybersecurity. Personally, I learn a lot from speaking to people, and that's something that I guess we all can align with as well. So and the participants who are here this morning, this afternoon, that's what we are here for. So we are not really here to sell you something, but just to have a conversation to understand more about the culture and how we can actually fulfill this mission of making the world a safer place. So thank you very much, Cheryl. Thank you very much, Daisy. Really appreciate the both of you joining us this morning. Would have loved to have done this in person. However, we are halfway around the world. So with this, thank you very much for joining us. And I would actually pass the time back to my boss, Mr. Teo Nessa, for the next segment. Thank you very much.